All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling John Austin,
John
a big name in legal theory, especially if you're into law and power.
Absolutely.
So philosophers out there, listen up. We're going straight to the source for this one. Excerpts from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on John Austin.
Austin's a really interesting guy, like super bright, but kind of tragic. Some of the best minds of his time, like John Stuart Mill, thought he was brilliant.
Wow.
But he was his own worst enemy.
Oh, no, what do you mean?
Perfectionism, personal struggles, it held him back.
That's tough.
Makes you wonder, what he could have done.
If he had the chance, yeah.
Exactly. But even with what we have, there's so much to dig into.
Right, like his command theory of law.
Exactly. That's the core of it. Really gets to the heart of
what law is.
Yeah, like what is law?
Big question.
Huge question.
So he's considered a founder of analytical jurisprudence.
One of the first, yeah.
So that's all about breaking down these big concepts, right?
Like taking them apart piece by piece.
Okay, so like a philosopher figuring out justice or duty? You're saying Austin did that for law.
Exactly. Law, right? Sovereignty, all of it.
And from a legal positivist view, right?
Totally.
Law as it is, not as we wish it would be.
Exactly. He didn't care about morals, not in this context.
Okay.
He had that famous line, "The existence of law is one thing, its merit or demerit is another."
Powerful stuff.
Right. Separates law from ethics.
Yeah, and I can see how that's been, well, both influential and controversial.
Oh, yeah. Huge implications.
Philosophically, I mean.
Holy, we'll get there.
When we talk about the criticisms, yeah.
But for now, let's stick with his approach. Keeping law and morality separate. Let him
focus on the structure?
Exactly. The nuts and bolts, no ethical debates.
Okay, so let's get to the heart of it. The command theory of law.
His most famous idea and probably the most debated.
So simple.
It really stirred things up.
So the basic idea is that law is basically a command from a sovereign.
That's the gist, yeah. But we got to unpack what he meant by command and sovereign.
Right, because those are very specific terms for
So super specific, yeah.
So command, it's not just like asking nicely, right?
No, there's force behind it.
More like an order.
Definitely an order, plus a threat.
A threat of what?
Harm, sanctions, if you don't obey.
So power's built right in.
Absolutely, it's all about power.
And then there's the sovereign, the one giving the command.
The big cheese.
Who is that, Winston?
Not just anyone in charge, like a parent or teacher.
Okay.
Someone obeyed by most people, but who doesn't answer to anyone else?
So a king, a dictator, maybe even a government.
If we think of it as one whole entity, yeah.
So the sovereign is key.
The source of all legal power.
If there's no sovereign?
No law, just other kinds of rules.
So Austin's saying all law is basically the sovereign's will, backed up by force.
Pretty much, yeah.
Sounds a bit like might makes right, which,
Philosophically.
Yeah, that's going to raise some eyebrows.
You're getting ahead of me.
Sorry.
We'll get to the criticisms, but for now, let's see how Austin himself thought this worked.
Okay, so commands, sovereign, punishment, that covers a lot. But what about, like, judges?
Good point.
They make laws too, but it's not the same as a king giving orders.
Right, so Austin had this idea of tacit commands.
Tacit commands.
Yeah, it's like a silent approval.
Okay.
So the sovereign doesn't have to say yes to every ruling.
But if they don't overturn it.
It's like they're saying, yeah, that's cool.
So it becomes a command.
Exactly, a way for the sovereign to delegate, but still be the ultimate source of law.
Clever, but it seems like command is doing a lot of work there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch.
And what about laws that aren't about commands at all? Like laws that give you rights or set up procedures?
You're getting at some of the big criticisms.
I can't help it.
It's great. You're thinking like a philosopher.
Well, even Austin saw that some things didn't fit, right?
He did, like international law, parts of constitutional law.
Didn't quite fit the mold.
We called them exceptions.
So he knew there were limitations.
He did, but remember, he was writing in a specific time and place.
Trying to make sense of law.
Yeah, systematically. And he was hugely influential.
Right, so
Now's when it gets really juicy, especially for a philosopher like yourself.
Let's do it.
Let's dive into the critiques. Okay, so even if Austin's theory isn't perfect, it's still got value, especially for a philosopher.
Okay, I'm listening.
That analytical approach, breaking things down, finding the logic, that's huge in legal philosophy.
So even if his conclusions are debated, the way he thought about it.
The method, yeah, that's still super relevant.
So the critiques are important.
Absolutely, they make us think.
About the same questions Austin was asking.
Exactly, but we've got more to work with now, more hindsight. you know?
Okay, so let's get critical.
Hit me with your best shot.
Where does Austin's theory fall short, especially for a philosopher?
Well, the big one, everyone points to it, is the sovereign.
Right, that very specific definition.
So specific, it's almost impossible to find someone who actually fits.
Like in Austin's time, in Britain,
Oh, yeah, a mess.
king, parliament, courts, who's the top dog?
Exactly. And in modern democracies, forget about it.
So Matt?
It gets philosophical, too.
How so?
If we don't know who's giving the commands, can we even talk about law in Austin's terms?
The whole thing kind of falls apart.
It does. And what about changes in leadership?
Right, a new prime minister, a new president.
They don't just automatically inherit that obedience Austin talked about.
He doesn't explain how that works.
Nope, just assumes the sovereign exists and is obeyed.
Doesn't really match up with reality.
Not really.
So what do people say who like Austin's ideas? How do they defend this sovereign problem?
Well, some say the sovereign's more like an office, an institution.
Not a specific person.
Right, like the king, but not King George III specifically.
The office itself.
Exactly. It stays the same even when the person changes.
Could work for Parliament, Supreme Court, even at Constitution.
Yep. The sovereign as a concept that lasts.
Clever way to try and save the theory.
It is, but is it enough?
Yeah, does it really solve the problem?
Good question for a philosopher.
Okay, so another defense I've heard.
Lay it on me.
The sovereign is just a metaphor.
A constructive metaphor, some call it.
So not literally one person.
More like a useful fiction.
Helps us understand law, even if it's not perfectly accurate.
Like a simplified model.
We can think about law as if it comes from one will.
Even if it's really a bunch of different people and institutions.
It's a way to bridge the gap between theory and reality.
Exactly, and it connects to another point.
Keep going.
About law and power, which is super relevant today.
You said Austin's work is still important, and I think this is where it really hits home.
Oh yeah, big time.
He might be wrong about the specifics of the sovereign,
Sure.
but he makes us see that law and power are connected.
Inseparable, really.
Whether it's a king or a parliament, there's always power involved.
Oh,
And to understand law, you have to understand power.
you can't separate them.
So even if there's no single sovereign,
Right.
Austin's theory makes us think about who has power and how they use it.
Exactly. Whose interests are served by the law? Who benefits? Who loses out?
These are big questions.
Huge. They get to the core of justice, equality, the whole point of law in society.
And that's where philosophy comes in.
Absolutely. So Austin's command theory, even if it's flawed,
It gets the conversation started.
it's a jumping off point for deeper questions.
Okay, so we've tackled the sovereign issue, the defenses,
Yep.
but there's another big critique.
Oh, yeah.
This whole command idea, is it too narrow?
That's the heart of it. What do we even mean by law?
How is it different from other rules?
Right. For Austin, it's all about orders and threats.
Almost like he's reducing law to just coercion.
And a lot of philosophers would say there's way more to it than that.
I mean, think about laws that give you rights.
Like free speech, voting.
Those aren't commands.
Not in Austin's sense, no.
They're about empowering you, not forcing you to do something.
Exactly. And then there are procedural laws.
Like the rules of evidence in court,
Those aren't about dictating outcomes. They're about fairness, due process.
making sure things are done right.
Exactly. More like setting the rules of the game, not giving orders to the players.
And Austin misses that completely.
With that focus on force, yeah, he misses the whole picture.
And there's a moral side of things, too.
Oh, yeah, huge.
Austin separates law and morality.
Right. Keeps them totally distinct.
So how do we know the difference between real authority and just brute force?
Good question, right?
Like, a tyrant could have a legal system, according to Austin,
Technically, yeah.
but it would feel wrong, illegitimate.
We'd know something wasn't right.
And that feeling, that sense of obligation, that's not just about fear of punishment.
It's about seeing the law as right, as just...
That's what Austin can't explain.
It's a blind spot for sure.
It's like H.L.A. Hart said, the internal point of view.
Hart, a classic critique.
People follow laws not just because they're scared.
They see them as reasons to act. They believe in the system.
They've accepted it.
Internalized it. Yeah.
Austin only looks at the outside, the external stuff.
He's missing that deeper connection people have with law.
It makes me think maybe he was too focused on the stick and not enough on the carrot.
Interesting way to put it.
He saw the force, but not the moral and social stuff that makes law work.
That's insightful. You're really getting it.
So, if the command theory is so flawed, why is it still so important?
Why are we still talking about it?
I feel like we've really taken Austin's theory apart,
We've been pretty tough on him. Yeah,
but there's got to be something there, something valuable.
that's definitely.
Maybe it's that simple approach, how he boils it down.
Just to the core.
Law and power, no sugarcoating.
He pulls back the curtain, shows you how it really works.
Even if it's not always pretty.
Exactly. No illusions.
Like that quote about the rule of men versus the rule of law.
Ah, yes, that's a good one.
Really captures Austin's view.
He saw law as a tool, an instrument of power.
Can be used for good or bad.
Depends who's holding it.
And that's so relevant today, especially for philosophy,
Absolutely, it makes you think.
about the ethics of it all.
Right, we can't just talk about justice in the abstract.
We have to look at how power shapes the law in the real world.
Exactly, so knowing all this about Austin...
His strengths, his weaknesses.
Yeah, the whole picture.
How would you, as a philosopher, define law?
Wow, that's a big one.
The million-dollar question.
I think for me, it starts with acknowledging that law is messy.
Messy.
Complicated, you can't define it in one sentence.
It's more than just rules.
Oh, it's rules, but it's also values, history. It shapes the future.
So it's not just what it is, it's what it does.
Exactly, how it works in society, how it affects people.
We have to consider all that.
We can't ignore the power, but we can't reduce it to just power either.
We need that moral dimension.
Right, the ideas of right and wrong, justice, all of that.
So a more nuanced view?
A holistic view, seeing the whole thing.
Recognizing the complexities.
The contradictions, too.
That's what philosophy is all about.
It is, thinking critically, but also questioning, challenging, imagining alternatives.
So not just understanding the law as it is.
But thinking about how it could be better.
More just, more ethical.
Exactly, and that's where Austin helps us.
Even with his flaws.
He makes us ask the hard questions.
About power, about justice.
And what law really means.
That's not just theoretical, it's about the world we live in.
It affects all of us.
And we all have a role to play in shaping it.
Absolutely, it's a conversation we all need to be part of.
So there you have it, our deep dive into John Austin.
A thinker who still makes us think.
Challenging ideas, important questions.
And that's what philosophy is all about.
If this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, check out the full Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy entry on John Austin. Happy pondering.